cool.
Yeah, but no, the recorder's on.
Picture driving by on
Councilor
Friday
Ford?
night, acoustic guitar inside the gazebo.
Councilor Ward,
There.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely.
would say it was your idea, of course.
6 o'clock.
Better than what's there.
Oh, by far.
You do this?
No. Dean Willie actually was actually working on it.
All right, I'm in. Definitely in. Thanks for the heads up on that. See you next
Wow,
week.
that would be beautiful, huh?
Sure.
We're live, just to let you know.
We live.
Pardon me, I know we're live. Let's open up this council workshop for September 4th. Let's dispense with, we're going to roll from one end to the other, so everybody please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hot mic.
Usually me.
No, he's good. He's right here.
Okay, do the pledge.
Try.
Just snuck in, huh? All right, sounds good.
All right,
Roll call.
12.
Okay, Councilor Albert.
Here.
Councilor Colby. Here. Councilor Brunel.
Here.
Councilor La Rochelle.
Here.
Councilor Ward.
Here.
Councilor Lunt.
Here.
And Councilor Crawford.
Here.
Next.
Next is to move into the workshop to discuss the Moxie Festival.
You want to facilitate the agenda and just run through it?
Sure. Want to begin with the budget and revenues, then talk about the festival timeline, the review the processes, improve efficiency and identify duplications. You'll move to opportunities for consolidation, what works well and what doesn't, future goals, so review the goals, future Moxie vision and resources needed to accomplish the goals and that vision, and discuss the committee questions, if there are any input and recommendations, and end with the additional resources for the transition.
Cool. It's an aggressive schedule, so let's get moving. First item, budget and revenues. Why don't you just give us a brief overview? Yep.
You are.
Oh, just turn the mics on. Towards you, yes.
There we go. Tracy Stuber, Economic and Community Development Director. I did send out the 2018 Moxie Festival financials, which you all should have received. As you can see, it's broken down to the expenses and what's come in as revenue. And on the last page, you can get a sense as far as on what was paid out for total expenses was $29,046.34. Sponsorships, we took in $18,725. Vendor fees was $4,675. Soda sales was $2,024. Moxie gear was $15,520. The Roman train, they give a donation back. That was $100. The group who did the face painting, they gave back her percentage. That came to $115. The ATM machine, we get a percentage of sales from the ATM machine. That was $133. And ECP Donate, that is East Coast Printers. They are the only licensed merchandiser for Moxie apparel. And for having them sell their T-shirts, they give a percentage back of their T-shirt sales to the committee as well. And that they were able to give us $350. So
To timeline for where we're at in the process and what we need to do before the next year's festival.
in the timeline, this is a year out of planning. Normally, the committee has the month of August off, and then we usually start planning right in September. So we are now entering into the month that we begin planning. Within the timeline, as you can see, there are tasks that are done throughout the year, website updates, social media updates, and any type of press releases. September, we do our first planning meeting. The committee begins its first festival meeting in September. We draft a meeting date calendar. We look at the dates throughout the year, and committee members are given that, and then it's also posted on the website. So the public are invited to attend any meetings, and hopefully we can get some more volunteers and new committee members. And then one of the first things we do is we choose our festival theme. This is important because as we get into the planning, everything is planned around the festival theme. That goes with the logo design, that goes within the parade applications, that goes within letting the sponsors know what our theme is as well. And it's just gearing up and getting everybody on board with what the theme is going to be for the year. October, we try to get in on the early end of getting sponsorships. So we get out our letters of notification to those who have been sponsors as well as other businesses as well. November, we announce the festival theme. Then we send out the sponsorship letters. Also in November, for the past couple of years, and I've also have put in for this year as well, that we participate in the Lisbon High, this is the Athletic Boosters, their craft show. So we usually purchase a table and we have a presence at that event. That's an opportunity to sell any of the other leftover Moxie gear that we may have, or just introduce on the festival and get people that never tried Moxie to sample Moxie, or it's just a fun day actually, just a community thing that we do. December, we advertise for the logo contest, and we begin that process of updating the applications. Also in December is usually the time that I get notification on the fireworks. So the fireworks are usually, the gentleman who's been doing our fireworks since I've been here the past 5 years is Central Maine Pyrotechnics, and he always goes over to China in December, and that's what he does. He buys all of his fireworks displays through the year. So by doing it on the early end of working with him on the fireworks, we're actually able to get a little better discount and even more bang for our buck, because they know ahead of time as far as what he needs to purchase. In January is things gear up a little bit more, where we start mailing out the parade applications, the vendor applications, and then we start working on the events. And how the festival works for folks that are kind of listening in for the first time to get an idea of it, is that at the beginning of the year is really, it's up to the committee chairs to come up with. So when somebody says, well, you need to do this event or you need to do that event, it really is going to depend on whether or not somebody's going to step up and manage that event.
Okay.
And then with that is, I also look at the committee to work on a budget. So when we start off the year, the festival, they literally start off with $0. Even though we have money in the budget to go forward, I'm able to kind of work with them on what we can and cannot do throughout the year and what we have available to spend. So this is the time for them to kind of get creative. This is also the time for them to help with the sponsorship and make sure that we are bringing in those funds. We never know when there's going to be a rainy year, and we still got to pay out all the expenses. And as you can see, the expenses can run up to about $30,000 a year, depending on the different events and what we bring in for entertainment. So back in February, January again, we work with all the committees, and then they start processing that. February, we continue to work on the schedule. We start looking at souvenir ideas. These ideas come from the folks that come to the festival every year. When they come to purchase the items, they come to purchase the items. They want the festival logo T-shirt. That they've been collecting them for years. That's really important to those that are especially far away. They also come up with other ideas of, hey, can you guys get this? Or we like to see, I think socks is a big thing. That's a request that people want to see. So again, the committee listens to that, and then we start looking for quotes and getting ideas as far as on what we want for what we call festival gear. In March, that's really where it's spent, is doing our quotes. I follow the town's purchasing policy when it comes to the items because of the dollar amount that is spent. So I do get quotes. Everybody gets the same what I'm looking for as far as for T-shirts or even the list of other items. And it is sent out to companies, and they send it back to me with their figures. And based upon the figures with the final count, that's who the lowest bidder, that's who it goes to, based on that. So that's how it's been done. That is, the committee is aware that that is the policy, the purchasing policy of the town, based within our charter, and I do follow that to a T.
The next question, when you move into April, it basically becomes the logistics and making it all happen.
Correct.
Is that the time frame where the person that we talked about this past go-round would have been on board for that 3-month period of time?
That's correct.
So is it 15,000? What was the figure that was set aside for that, Diane?
I don't think we did set aside anything because,
I know we authorized to be able to hire for something. To be able,
I don't think
come
we came to
with
a
a figure.
No.
Okay.
We didn't come to a figure. We were really looking at the timelines, and we were figuring a part-time about 20 hours,
Right.
20 hours a week, in course, gearing up for that
Okay.
As
initial
it gets
weekend.
closer to July, we would rely on them more.
Right.
At the beginning, it wouldn't be 20 hours a week.
Please, sir.
Just going back to the budget, I just had a question before we got too far involved. The fireworks, it just says town. So is that actually what the town does with their donation? Basically, is that usually equal to fireworks?
Yes.
So it's like a 25.
So in my budget, there's $5,000, and that's what pays for the fireworks.
Pretty much, it's a 5,000, okay. And the so that's not actually calculated into the net for the.
Correct.
It's that 12,000 is not.
That's the
calculated.
town's sponsorship, along with the logistics from police, fire.
Okay. I was just curious. I see town, so I wasn't sure. I assumed that, but I didn't want to do that. So.
No, that's fine.
Kind of piggybacking on Alan's question, then, we're talking about a 120-day period that we would use that additional staff then, and we're estimating on a part-time level with the ramping up in the final run-up to the event. Am I hearing that right?
Yes.
Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah.
4 months. Now, you guys have had a recap of how the actual festival went, so let's move into what went well this year. What's the challenge for looking forward before we even get into anything else?
Well, as far as from the committee's point of view, they felt everything went very well. All considering, we had a short of our volunteers, especially with our chairs, so others had to step in. The parade was something very different because there wasn't anyone that had run the parade. But thanks to Carlton and other committee members and others who stepped up, we were able to pull off the parade. And the feedback that I got from those who participated in the parade, they thought it was great. They enjoyed it. Everybody that came really enjoyed it. There was a lot of good comments about the festival. So that made us feel good in a sense, is because when you look at any type of event, there's always the behind the scenes of things that are going on, and the people that are viewing, they don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They think everything is smooth and everything's running just fine, and that's really the perception that you want. So as long as everybody's coming, they're having a good time, the businesses are doing well, and you're bringing in thousands of people to this community. They're already booking for next year. Once I set the date as far as for next year's festival, they were already posting that, oh, we've booked already, so we're going to be going. So that says a lot.
Anybody else from the committee that would actually add anything different to the dialogue?
They could.
Anybody wanting?
Jonathan?
This isn't designed to be a meeting where we actually just put Tracy or Mark on the hot seat. It's an active participation, so we are going to be jumping.
It's been cold.
All right, anybody else's observation from this year's Moxie Festival? What went well, what would be improvement, please?
You can step up there.
Hi, I'm Julianne Baumer, and I did some media and PR for the festival. In the past, I've done the recipe contest and just about everything. Car show. Class of 82, we do the car show. Anyway, I was not as involved this year, and so I kind of stepped in and realized I needed to step up at the end, that critical period. And my perception of the festival is that it was really excellent. From an internal and an external perspective, there was no, in the past we've had some problems with different factions in town who have different thoughts about what the Moxie Festival is. We did not have that this year. There was real unity among the festival committee. I felt like everybody really pulled together, and we were kind of, all pulling the rope together equally. So that went really well. My perception from discussing it with other people, I was going to check my phone to try to. I communicated with this gentleman. He writes for, I want to say, the Worcester paper, and he had written up an article after the festival, or it was an article he wrote, and it was in the paper the day before the festival, and he was talking about how I'm going to the Moxie Festival. I've always wanted to go to the Moxie Festival, and I don't know what's going to happen. And, of course, he's talking about Moxie. And so I contacted him after the festival, and I said, so what was your experience? And he said, it was really great. And, my only feedback was you needed better signs. I couldn't find my way around, but, we've heard that before. And he said that he would rather have come to he's glad he came to our Moxie Festival instead of his town's, I think it was Worcester, our town's macaroni and cheese festival. So,
Moxie outbeat macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
What day is that festival?
just it was a really positive experience for me, and I kind of stepped away thinking I'm really excited for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, from your side of things, I
Yeah.
know the 5K, the car festival. What do you see the best of this year?
Well, we have a lot of volunteers that come back year after year, and it makes our job so much easier. This year was seamless. It seems like every year something happens where something gets forgotten. We didn't have helium for the balloons for the start of the 5K. It's okay. We still had balloons, but it's just one of those things. But every year, it seems like you can't have a festival without some glitch happening. It's how you react to them. And with our volunteers that have been here for year after year, it seems like it just has been so seamless. The 5K, it's kind of slowed to 500 to 450 runners, and if we get to, grow like the LO being 10K, 800, 1,200 runners, we have to push the parade back to 11 o'clock instead of 10. So we don't know if we want to grow anymore there. We're happy with the numbers we've been having. With the car show, it's great if the weather's great, and 6 out of the last 7 years, we've had great weather. Been very fortunate, and we made exactly $8,300 this year for the car show. So I just say
If you had to pick a challenge for next year, what would yours be?
our challenge next year.
No, in general for the festival. I didn't say yours.
Oh, for the festival. Oh,
Chose my words wisely. I know my audience here.
what I hear from family members and friends is that there's not a lot of big bands in the parade. Mm-hmm. I know they cost money. I would say that bring back the big bands.
Entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one. It's probably the biggest one I heard.
That was one of my observations from Friday night. I like the block party. The fact is the band that was actually there with the stage and that touch a truck. Anything that spreads out the weekend for a true weekend into Friday, and you get people around for the Sunday, and you're in different parts of town. It takes the pressure off the downtown, meaning immediately Main Street and that kind of whatnot, and makes it a much more enjoyable festival, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. All right, next item. Anything that doesn't work straight out of the gate?
I think you can make anything work as far as in just having the support and the people behind it to help. It's no different than any type of event or organization. It takes bodies.
Right.
I think, and again, it may be just cutting to the chase or just a discussion is, we've been here over the years, several different times in the Moxies after the event and looking at things and typically why I think the discussion here is tonight and why people are out and what as the council is looking at is it's kind of repeats itself over a few years is the festival is actually, I don't think anybody will argue the festival is actually a great opportunity for the town. It brings the town together and it allows the town to actually unite for a weekend and bring in some extra monies, but typically what usually happens is over a few years and I think everybody that's worked in the festival can say the same thing. It comes down to the idea of resources and the idea of continuing the festival without burning people out. And I think that's why we're here. I think that's why we have both, you and Mark here, is the idea of, I think resources are tough. I mean, especially in when we actually have times where our economic's down. I think we have plenty of spare time to work on things because there's not much happening. But if you look around Lisbon right now, there's a lot of things happening.
There is.
So I'm sure that your office gets busier, and the idea of time to be able to dedicate towards Moxie gets less when it becomes more. And we're a town office now where everybody is not just has a single position. I think everybody kind of shares a position like any other business. Everybody's not just doing their job; they're doing their job and a person's job that was there before, or the three people that were there before. I mean, that's an ongoing. And volunteers. I mean, I think it's very tough to pull in volunteers, and I got to admit, I see some really dedicated people that actually, a lot of people come forward and help for a couple of years, and they kind of fade away, and you don't feel. I mean, they actually do it just because it's a lot of work, and sometimes it's very demanding. So, I think as we move forward tonight's discussion, I think the key things we need to look at is why are we doing tonight. I think, and just to make sure is, how do we move forward with the idea of not tapping out our resources or not having the resources to be able to do it. Whether that's actually done through one department or two department, or actually bringing outside help. So when we talk about the idea of bringing an outside person in, that's just what it means. The idea of bringing an outside person in that actually would actually either help whatever entity is actually controlling the Moxie Festival, whether it's actually done through economic development and community or it's through the rec. I mean, to me, it doesn't really make a difference where office you put it in. It's going to need help regardless because everybody's tapped out. I mean, as much as our economic development has grown, Mark's actually grown his recreation to the point where everybody's, I mean, there's no one in the community, and not in the community, there's no one in the municipality that has extra time. So I think as we look tonight, I think what we need to figure out is if the transition of, not even a transition, moving forward to the festival, how do we do this logistics as far as for the town, as far as our employees, what departments, how we make that work, and how do we actually expand the volunteer base so the volunteers can actually help and not feel overwhelmed. It is, I'm sure the day after Moxie, it's called like anything like the Moxie hangover where people just kind of, they can't function for a week after because they get all stressed out. And as you mentioned, a lot of things happen seamlessly, but there's a lot of things behind the scene that happens that actually isn't seamless, that actually at the end of the day it all happens. So as we look at some of the items that are here, I think are really good, but I think we just need to really kind of go back to the point of, I'd hate to leave tonight not actually having the really honest discussions of, how much time, was departments putting into it, and how do we actually share that responsibility, or how do we move that responsibility, and if we are going to move it, and we need extra help, where's that need to be, and I think Alan from his financial background is looking at hours, how many hours we need to bring somebody on strictly the financials and making it actually feasible. But I think that's one of the things we're looking for the committee to be here too. People have served on the committee saying, look, it would have been really good to actually have someone help me with this. I mean, or, I got a full-time job and I love helping, but, if we had actually had extra help with this. One of the resources Mark brings on is the endless know of people in town. I mean, pretty much everybody knows Mark, so if Mark needs help, odds are Mark can actually get help. Whether or not that's actually, he's actually earned that, though, for over years of actually doing good things for the town. And, again, there's a lot of different resources out there, so I think that's part of tonight's discussion is just when we move it forward, how do we make it easier for everybody and how do we make still a good festival? And, from some of the discussions I heard is, taking stuff away from the festival, adding stuff to the festival, but as a counselor, I learned a few years back that it's easy to sit back and watch sometimes because, again, you do get burnt out sometimes when you help or work. But, if the people on the committee say, this is a great event, but I'd like to have some more help next year, I think that's kind of what we're looking for is how do we make that happen, or with the resources we can pull that from. So hopefully the committee does actually add some input here because we have staff that works on the festival, which works really hard, but actually the volunteers are the main focus of this, and there's been some ideas of getting other groups involved where, like the parade, actually getting a group that would actually step forward and actually manage a parade, with some guidance from the town. And Mark actually mentions the idea of the 5K and the car show kind of runs itself in a sense, but it's taken a long time to get there. But it still has a lot of volunteers in place to make that happen, and again, I'm just kind of talking, but maybe I'm going in a different direction than what you're looking for. But
you are doing a fine job, sir.
So again, as volunteers tonight, there's no one that wants to see the committee go away. I mean, not the committee, but actually the festival itself. I think the biggest thing that we want to do before we get too deep into next year is figure out how it works for the municipality, as far as not tapping out resources on one end or the other. And if we are to bring people in to actually help, what does that look like dollar-wise? Does the festival, make enough financially to bring that on? Because in years past, there has been, several years back, just people have been looked at the, taxpayers looked at the festival saying, why are we funding a festival? So I mean, I think we can make an argument for it either way, but we just got to justify that.
I think looking at the timeline and the breakdown, and I'm glad we have it, thank you for putting it together. I see that the ECD is in a lot of these different spots throughout the entire piece. So for me, it would just be bean counter wants me to audit all those functions and kind of get a time frame associated with them. And then we can kind of put together a real world number of how much of this time, how many hours does that translate to for all of these tasks that the ECD currently is handling. And then we can kind of start to get a real understanding, get our arms around if we hire a volunteer in that 120-day period or whatever period time frame we need them for, maybe it could be something that on this timeline, there's only X amount of hours in this month that needs to get addressed that normally Tracy would have done, but now we can get this volunteer to kind of get on board and be like, okay, this is part of this timeline. I need to be able to go in there in November and do these functions and tasks. And then, we can, as we get closer to the event, obviously that would increase more responsibility and more time. That would be a thought.
A lot of it really comes down to the administration part of it, and that's with, like for instance, doing sponsor letters. I will put out an email to the committee and says, okay, we're stuffing envelopes, we're having a working meeting, everybody comes in, and that's what we do, we stuff envelopes. And then I have to do the mailing of it. So it's those types of things. It could be just updating some of the applications. The committee's chair is given the applications. We discuss it as a committee. Where do we need to tweak it? How do we need to improve it? That sort of thing. And then those things get posted. Everything gets posted on the website, and that within social media as well. So it's more of those admin type things that can, like anything, can take up time. That's just like I can come in on a Monday and I have over 100 emails. Well, I spend all morning Monday just going through and filtering through emails. So it's that type of thing that can really take up a lot of time.
So I kind of want to go back, and I'm glad you brought it up, just using that stuffing the envelopes, working meeting piece. And this is part of the efficiencies that we talked about before. I'm not sure why we're using paper methods. We're using 20th century approach to 21st century problems. Yep. We can use email. We could set up the vendor forms on the web page so that vendors can go there.
We do, but not all vendors have email, and they want that paper document.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So what I guess my point would be is to say identify which vendors would want to operate in an email or a paperless environment. Mm-hmm. Take the vendor forms that I know that on the timeline we talked about, and make them accessible through our brand new shiny website, and then give people, start to kind of shepherd them there, understanding that there'll always be people who will say, I'd rather have a hard copy.
To go on to your point, the vendors are usually, they are done via email. Mm-hmm. It's because on the applications, they have to all give us an email address. So they are done via email. The parade applications a little differently is because they got to send in all their backup documentations as far as, and they look for that that orange envelope. And this was something that, which Gina, they know when that orange envelope comes in the mail that that's Moxie. Sure. So, they've gotten into the habit of that. Within the sponsors, it's more of that personal letter, thanking them for their support, and giving them a little bit more back, in information. And of course, with their sponsorship, they're also given another sheet that says, for your sponsorship, based upon the dollar amount, this is the value that you're going to get, on that. But to your point on within the vendors, they are all emailed for the vendors.
Excellent. And it's just looking at ways to shave cost. Yes. Yep. And I'm sure you probably looked at that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's just a matter of saying, looking at those little things that will add up to big changes. Mm-hmm. And change is hard. And I understand that orange envelope is usually a trigger for most folks to realize, hey, we're in that mode again. We got to kind of change gears. So it's tough, when that change comes around to say we're going to try something a little bit different. And who's to say it doesn't? If some people don't like it, there's there's nothing wrong with going back. Trying something
Yeah.
is never a bad thing,
Right.
as long as we do the research and understand this may be a benefit for them and for us.
We do post, and again, even within the parade applicants, they get a follow-up with an email too, because we ask for those. A lot of the time is within the Shriners units, because they change constantly. So we're not going to know who's the president of their unit until they fill out the application. So again, we try to, everything is on the website, the Moxie Festival website, as well as it gets on the social media aspect too. You know, applications are ready. The link goes right there so they can download it and fill that out. But yeah, what we're finding, what I have found in going through, especially more so the parade, because this is the first time that I had to take on everything on the parade, was that there were different presidents. In fact, I had some of the Shriners units come in and says, "Oh, so and so always did that. Now I'm the president of the group, so it's my turn." So
Changing contacts,
changing the
I'm
guards.
sure makes it tough.
Exactly.
Makes it tough.
Yes.
Who's your sponsorship coordinator this year?
The sponsorship coordinator in the past has been Brenda Rogers, but due to illness and that, she has not been able to do that. So I've had to take on that role.
That's
Along with the committees. That's why.
cold fish in the room. It's an awkward conversation to be had that our economic development person is asking for cash from local businesses.
Yep. That's why
That's an opportunity already on the list. That's just simple stuff. The fact is, if it's supposed to be a nonprofit organization that actually benefit the community, it would be in our best interest to not have it be a staff person that's doing that ask.
Yeah.
That's
What the letter states is based upon the behalf of the Moxie Festival Committee.
Sure.
It is the committee members that do the envelopes and stuff. Basically, I just put it through the
There are people sitting in this room
mail.
that know that I'm the sponsorship person for
Yeah.
LJL. I'm in the same position
Yeah.
when I'm talking about businesses and I'm asking for something that actually we believe in. But it is still an awkward conversation
Yes,
that
it
I am
is.
not asking as a counselor, or I am not asking as a staff member. I'm asking for the committee.
That's correct.
Future vision. The fact is, the goal here tonight is basically to make sure that it's given the proper resources so we're not, I've heard the word poison pill, who gets stuck with the poison pill associated with the festival. Is it really the right way to phrase it for something that actually we all agree actually is beneficial to this community, but somebody still has to do the legwork to be able to make it happen? What do we tweak? Why don't I pick your brain, Mark? And the fact is, we've beat up on Tracy here for the last 10 minutes.
The last council meeting, it was said that you wanted to talk about the transition from
Yep.
the Moxie Festival to come from the Economic Development Department to the Recreation Department. And looking at the timeline, looking at the budget, and talking with my staff and some of my rec committee members, the things that happened between September and middle of March, those are things that you can be done in our department with no problem. It's not a lot of work, throwing envelopes in the mail, and I mean, it probably is whether you're doing other things, but we have a department with, staff.
programming.
Administrative stuff. We
Right.
have administrative staff in our department that could do that. We can eat that piece of it.
Yeah.
But between middle of March to middle of July, it's a different egg altogether. And
Right.
that way, that's when I would recommend hiring somebody for the 640 hours or 16 weeks to be the Moxie Committee chairperson or coordinator, not an administrative assistant to help do things like that, but to oversee the Moxie Festival. That's my vision
Okay.
and my staff's division.
Do you see that, since you've kind of brought that forward, do you see that actually that person being overseen by your department, or
Yeah, it'd be under our umbrella, yeah.
be under your umbrella?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So where would that actually bring, say, a ED office in as far as,
So
it would still have to be use some resources from there?
oh,
right?
yeah,
So,
absolutely. In fact, I would see it as the transition piece we'd meet on a monthly, maybe even bi-weekly basis, just to get through everything that she's done over the last few years, just so our department can, attain success. We need to be successful. And the Moxie Festival is it's not a short order. It's a big deal. And we don't want to fail. We wouldn't want to fail. So Tracy would have to be a big part of that. And I would think by the 1st of March, that we would have all the information but she's always a phone call away too.
I think it'd be ideal because I think with the wealth of knowledge and experience that she has,
Absolutely.
it'd be great because when you do that check-in meeting, however you guys determine what the right amount of time that is, she will be able to, because it's fresh in her mind, fresh perspective. You can say, hey, we hit all these things, but she'd be like, hey, there's one more thing. I just want to make sure this got done. Boom. And then that's nice because you always know that there's kind of a safety net there to make sure nothing gets overlooked.
Right.
I think Jonathan has a question.
Please.
Come up to the podium. Yeah. Yeah.
Just one thing, say all you want.
No.
Introduce yourself.
That's for Sunday. So I figured I'd answer your question. I don't know a lot, but I've been here. I'm sorry. My name is Jonathan Jones. How's that? Okay. I've been in Lisbon for 14 years. Love the community. So I came on the committee about 12 years ago, and I think you know this, and Twyla, there might be a few others here, but for everybody that doesn't, just the history when I came on, a lot of you were running it. And so to make a long story short, I'd say about 5 years after that, we had some turnover. I think it was Rosie, then Scott, and then finally we have our beloved leader now. So we're glad to have you here. But we went through some rough years, as you remember, and it was interesting. I watched a committee I remember walking in the first meeting. I think it was May. I don't know if you remember, Twyla. It was April or May, and there had to be 20 people. It was as many as you and us in the front row, and a week later there was like 5 of us. And to be honest, I've watched that every year. That's just about, so to answer some of your questions, I mean, that's what happens. And I think there's a variety of reasons. People get burnt out. We all work, I work in a church, whether people volunteers get burnt out. That happens. But I think 2 things happened that I watched the last 14 years was the festival almost doubled. Whether it was people-wise or just the amount of things. I ran vendors for 5 years, and we would go on vacation every June. And I would spend either 7 to midnight every night of my vacation away from my wife and kids answering the phone, or 7 to noon. And my wife just got sick of it. And so to be honest, that's why I backed off the last couple of years. Probably good if I pastor my church, and they weren't real happy about it. So you have that happens, but we have people that love the festival like you. And so I just watched it year after year, people getting burnt out. Plus, we've watched a culture that with insurance and different things, it's a dangerous place. And so, yeah, you're right. You can send out emails. I live in that world too, but, an email doesn't answer a question like a piece of paper does, unfortunately, right? And so if you send an email out to somebody, they'll write you back with 950 questions. They want to call you on the phone. I mean, it's the world we live in, right? People want to, and so I think the work gets more, and volunteers just can't handle it. So I have been for years in favor of, as much as I know we don't have a lot of money in town, but we have a little bit in the committee. I think we need somebody, And I think it's fluid, I think it would be hard to say, Tracy would know, but I think it'd be hard to say it's going to be exactly 20 hours. It might be. There might be some weeks it might be 10. There might be some weeks it's 45. I mean, but I think that 20 is probably a good thing. Diane and some of the others would probably know. But, I guess looking at where we were at this year, it ran really well. I thought it was one of the best festivals we had. But I think a lot of it was because Tracy about killed herself doing it, to be honest with you, with a couple other people. And that's not good. Our town is popping. There's a lot of great things happening in Lisbon. We all love it. I'm pumped. We're like the center of the state right now, it feels like. I think that's awesome. Let's keep this rolling with Moxie. But moving forward, I think we're going to have somebody. And to me, this is kind of like that stake in the ground, where if we're going to go forward with this, then we got to put it out. And for me as a committee member, I'm all for it, whoever it's under, because I think it's just reached a level where we realized it with the town that you guys couldn't handle it. And then we brought in the volunteers, and as a volunteer, I'm telling you, I don't think we can handle it. We can handle a piece of it, but there's just too much. And when we look at other festivals that are bigger than us, like the Clam or whatever, they've got somebody working full-time, or at least half-time. So we have a good precedent. And I think just, we have a lot of really smart people here. I think we could, bring some of them in, and we probably should. Tracy's run many festivals. She's got a ton of wisdom. There'd be nothing wrong with asking a couple of them. How could we, like you were saying, maybe there's some ways we can improve. I'm sure there are ways we can improve. But just like most of you, when we come into a meeting and we're volunteers and we've got, an hour and a half, right? And we're trying to plan an hour and a half a month, just to be honest with you, for roughly 45,000 people over a 3-day, and that's just crazy, right? And by God's good grace, we made it happen. But I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when our good friend and yours, Gina, passed away. It was kind of like the nail that just said, okay, you know what, this is just too much. And to be honest with you, if she was here, she had been crying for that for years. That I don't know if she did it from up there, but she did in our committee meetings and said, look, we need to. So that's just, you can disagree, but I'm just being honest with you. That's where I'm at, and I'm all for, and I think it's one of those things we got to make it happen. I pay taxes in the town. I say let's do it. It's huge. And just one more thing, I got to be a part this year of the taste test contest for Moxie, which was really weird and really cool, but I couldn't believe it. And again, it was one of those things that we had Channel 8 here a couple years ago in Chummies, and I felt bad for, Chummies. We had like 30 people, but if anybody was there, it was crazy. The 30 people that were there, 20 of them were from Arizona, New Mexico, California, Washington, and Mississippi.
Yep.
Like, I grew up in Ohio. I'm an Ohio boy, but I live here, and, I'm Mainer as much as you won't let me. Too bad. I'm going to be a Mainer. But, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, wow. And so I understand there's two kinds of people in Lisbon. You either go to the festival or you leave. Whatever. I'm not, that's your prerogative. But there are a lot of people that come, they're out of town. And I think not just our own community, but the communities around us. If you go to Lewiston, you go to Brunswick, and the hotels are full, because people are coming to this. And so it's bringing in a lot of economic growth. And the last thing I would add that I think whoever this person is, the one area I think we could improve in the festival is by getting more and more of our Lisbon people to be down there, be vendors. I've always thought, like, if I had a vision for it, it would be, and we've done a great job, but there's a ton more businesses in Lisbon. I think it'd be awesome to showcase all of our Lisbon businesses, the ones that are down there that own, their frontage, and then other people that are just from Lisbon. To me, that would be the coolest festival ever. You know what I'm saying? And we got enough businesses we could pull it off. So
Things have changed downtown. I mean,
Yeah,
several years ago
absolutely.
there was more empty
Yeah, that's
storefronts
right.
and it was busy, but now it's actually pretty busy. May I just add one more thing to it?
Please.
I mean, if you look at it, I mean, several years ago we had looked at it with the staff, and some of the staff said that they were using up to 25% of the year to actually run the festival, which isn't really unreasonable in a sense, right? I mean, if you start thinking the amount of the time that you have, how many hours did you think of just part-time?
Well, we just talked about 20, I think that was the
No,
number.
but I mean, it's total hours. You came up with 600 and
Yeah,
something.
I didn't, but I think it was 640 somebody just threw out there, yeah.
But that's just short math, the idea of thinking of someone coming on part-time. So if you kind of take that away from a full-time position, I guess my goal would be, which would be nice, is the idea of thinking that, using 25% of your time, Tracy, out of your office is great when you actually have, 25% of spare time. But that doesn't work. Does this event go hand in hand with the office? Absolutely. I mean, because that's, there's a lot of it that doesn't connect. To me, the ultimate goal would be is if we could take that 25%, share it between two departments, and actually hire someone that takes over half that. So, if you took that 25% and actually had a couple departments take, 5 to 7% of it, and actually hired out the rest of it, to me that would be not overwhelming. I mean, I'm just looking at those as just rough numbers. I mean, I'm just the idea of sharing the responsibility a little bit, and the idea of bringing on another person. And, looking at the funding, it's the reason I asked for that $5,000 initially for the fireworks is because we actually do have kind of a precedence in the idea of actually using TIF money to actually help work with the festival. And it's not unreasonable to think that even if we had to offset that more, that it actually possibly could be done by looking the way that's presented. Not for sure, but I assume that could be looked at. So the biggest thing is just making it work, and I think that's kind of why we're here. We just don't want volunteers to be stressed out. And I know I've actually talked to you a couple of years after the vendors, and you can actually just see the relief of that stress going away. There's a lot of stuff that's actually weighing on a volunteer. To me, an idea of a volunteer is someone that shows up rah that day, and I help market the car show. I know I'm not needed to the morning of. I show up, I do my thing, and then when I'm done, I go home. There's really no weight on my shoulders, but I feel good for that as being a volunteer. If it came to me as saying, okay, you could have the food ready, you could have this ready, that'd take me out of that volunteer and actually put me more of a committee person at that point, which a lot of people like volunteering. They just don't want to have the responsibility of actually needing to be there, because things change every day in our lives, and you hate to let anybody down. So it's easy to just kind of skate on the outside and volunteer some time versus the idea of being a dedicated member. So if we can hire someone to be that dedicated person, to me that would take a lot of weight off, not just our staff, but actually volunteers. But
Couple things.
Go ahead.
Kind of, if you don't mind,
No,
jump in here. real
absolutely,
quick.
all set.
Thank you for getting up and giving us that input. And kind of a couple things that jumped out at me from that and from some of the other things we've talked about today is that it's that crisis mode that we get into in that April running up to July. And I think that while the crisis mode, you find people who rise to the occasion and show their true colors and their ability to carry, that hair on fire mentality is not sustainable. And I think that's why you have a volunteer committee that starts at 20 for the first meeting and dissipates to 4 or 5. And all of a sudden the 4 or 5 are there. They're gamers. They got a big heart. But eventually they will hit the wall. And then it's 3. And it's 2. And then there's a real crisis. And then you go back to Tracy's role. You have somebody who is traditionally probably putting in 50, 55 hours in the ED role, economic development, and then you tack on another 20, 25, and that's me being very conservative.
Yes, it is.
To that role. So you're at a position where she doesn't even want to look at what the hourly might look like if she starts putting her that together. So it's about helping that office, because as a council, and I'm only speaking for myself, but as a council, I know I want her expertise in developing and growing all these great opportunities. We're growing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're super attractive right now.
Yes, we are.
And the festival is fantastic, and it helps to kind of compound that. But it is one festival. And if I look at this, there are a whole lot of other days out of the year that she could be working and benefiting this community. And I know she wants to do that, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind some of that hair on fire approach going away or being redistributed. And so looking at the recreation department, it's not saying, hey, hot potato, all yours. It's more about saying, we get some great volunteers that are our core, and then all of a sudden, if we get some real meaningful structure around this and outlines, something that can be put into place would be sort of the foundation or the spine, if you will, framework, and then from there start to build off of that. How can we keep our volunteers? Well, not having them have to do 27 things, and then giving something to them that they like to do. Volunteers are excited when they do things that they normally would do in their outside lives, and they enjoy. And the same thing to be said, realizing that there are going to be gaps where we need to hire somebody, and we need somebody who's going to be the project manager driving the thing forward with oversight from a department head. So I guess that's the vision that I see when I kind of brought this to the table. I don't know if that makes sense, but it certainly sounds like it's a plan that we could at least take a look at seriously, because I think it's going to offer relief to all involved.
I think there's some opportunity too, as far as even not changing the whole festival, but the actually of modifying and changing, some parts of it to make it easier. I mean, the idea of actually allowing our downtown to be downtown, to me, is a great event. And I know Ross has spoken to this in some of the positive change meetings, the idea of allowing the downtown to actually, the people that own the storefronts to actually, participate a little bit more in a sense. Not that they couldn't already, but actually take more of an ownership in it. One of the things that we're going to have to start looking at change a little bit, because Tom and Diane probably know a little bit better, but actually there's going to be a summer in the near future that we're not going to be using Main Street for Moxie, because it's going to be dug up with a major construction project, So I think there's some planning that could be done ahead of time to try to change that. I'd hate to see that all happen in 1 year, because I think it would be very trying. But that changes the route of our parade. It changes the whole downtown. And again, I don't know all the details on it, but from what a DOT says, there won't even be any sidewalks down there for part of the summer. So, that kind of changes the whole dynamics of that. But I think some pre-planning and some foresight on how that's actually going to play out, I think, is really important. We may have a parade that actually turns on School Street and goes to the MTM. It may be something different, or it may just go, maybe go a different route. But I think that's the type of stuff that we need to start planning for. And everything changes, right? You just got to kind of work with it.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Ross Cunningham. I live here in Lisbon. As you know, we're not on the committee, but we've been running the concerts in the park as PCL for years. And I caution some of the move I'm hearing is that you hire an administrative assistant or somebody who does 20 hours a week for the last 3-4 months. I'll tell you, as having done fundraising for 10 years now, you haven't lived until Scott Kelly and George Roy run the other way when you walk in the door. I don't want to see either of these folks in that position. And you already brought it up that the town is asking for money. So I'm concerned that you're going to leave that in Mark's hands to go ask for this $18,000 that we raise. I really feel like it would benefit us to hire somebody that's a little more elevated and able to go make those pitches to larger companies. I think the potential is there to double your sponsorships. I don't think 18 is a really, I mean, I know you work hard at it, and I know she gets what she can, but again, she's got other jobs. I think if you had a dedicated fundraiser, you could see that go up by 20 to 30%, and then you'd have a little more money to work with to pay that person who's doing that work as well. I know that there are other organizations who do that. They fundraise for their own salary. So I just want to make sure we're not looking too hard at administrative assistant for the rec department that is just doing, you know, letters and things like that, and leaving Mark to do the fundraising, because I don't think that's really the right thing for his position. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. That was keeping us on task. I was asking for additional resources. So.
I was really hoping he was jumping up to say PCL will take it on. Thanks.
And you're the new biggest member, right?
Right? No, I was looking at the entertainment chair. It's vacant right now.
Any other resources that need to be considered? All right. Committee questions. I see members of the various committees here, so we would ask that question of you. So anybody wants to step forward, it's please.
Can I just offer some input?
Absolutely.
Just making notes throughout the meeting. Sure, thanks. Heather Cronin. I joined the Moxie committee over the past couple of years for a couple of the reasons that I've heard a lot of everybody talk about today, and that was volunteer. And actually, Brenda Rogers really got me involved, because that's all she said was, we need the volunteers, we need the volunteers. So I said, fine, I'll help you. And then I got the love for it, because then I was like, we can't lose this festival because we don't have the volunteers. So these are random notes as I was scribbling as everybody was talking, so bear with me a little bit. I can't remember who said the Moxie hangover. This was the first year for me. I know Tracy before Tracy had it. I don't feel like we had that because we had such a smooth festival.
We did.
Like, we're always going to have glitches and hiccups and things are going to happen. But collectively as a committee, even though we were small, we were on point for this festival. Yeah. I was actually able to take on the social media task from Tracy this year. So I was talking to people from Lisbon and from Arizona and New York and Pennsylvania, and I still talk to them. I'm still getting messages. When's the date? What's going on? And that's all I heard. I didn't really hear any negative feedback. Maybe some more seats. Can you get some shade? Can you get a table? Yeah, we can do that. Those things are easy. So I just wanted to say that, how wonderful and what great feedback we got from the festival this year. I agree with bringing on a person to help. I know there were times where I would email Tracy and say, Tracy, what can I help you with? And she'd say, I'm only here till 4:30. I work. I can't get here. So there was times that as a volunteer, I had downtime, or maybe Pastor John or someone else did, but we work. We can't get here during those town office hours to do those administrative tasks that Tracy, I think, ended up taking on a lot herself, especially with the parade. And that was because, of course, the loss of our beloved Gina on that. So I think bringing on someone to do that, someone that could be here during those hours, would be critical to managing the festival. I also think the festival's at the point where we're on that cusp. We're not quite big enough to pay. Maybe there's going to be some, do we have this money to pay for someone? But we're also big enough that if we don't, we're going to lose a lot of the festival as well. And that is just from what I'm seeing so far from the last couple years, I think we're just on that cusp of, we got to take that leap. We may lose a little bit up front, but I think we're going to gain so much on the back end of it. It's going to be so worth it. Ross, I love the idea about having that person fundraise a little bit. I love the sponsorship letters going out. I do think it adds that personal touch. Again, Norm, I agree with you, trying to do some more stuff via email, though, and trying to, I know I run a business, and postage is for me. And I know that adds a lot of cost to the festival, so maybe trying to, who can we do through email? Who can we still want those orange envelopes, for example, and just reaching out? But if we had that person that we could personally go out, I always find that, like, when I chaired the Lisbon Community School PTO auction for several years, we could send letters and emails all day long, but when someone showed up at a business, they gave. Yep. So if we could have that person even out, maybe someone is working 20 hours in October because they're out getting those donations. So that was a great idea that Ross had, and I love that. So I'm going through my notes. Bear with me. storefront, we talked about businesses participating. This year I actually tried to get businesses on Main Street participate. I know there's been some chatter. I don't like the festival. I have to shut down my business. I love the festival. I gain business. And that's been a mix over the years. I actually tried doing a window decorating contest with the storefronts this year. 3 businesses participated.
I didn't know about it as a Main Street business.
All the letters, yeah, they went out. Okay, so maybe we need to communicate that a little bit more. But I think those businesses have to be willing to participate as well, and rather than just, and I'm not saying every business, so don't get me wrong when I say that, Laura. But instead of, maybe being, I'm upset, I'm losing business, what can you do business that day? Serenity Beauty Spa, for example, opened up her doors Friday night and was doing orange coloring girls' hair and doing some different things. So I guess it's also getting those businesses to be willing to do that for the festival on that day. And that could be either Friday night or Saturday. I Am Wireless came down and popped up a tent. They were giving away iPads. Everybody was all happy about that. So I would just encourage, I guess, maybe the committee, and this would have to go back to us, to find a way to get those businesses to participate and be willing to join us and not always poo-poo us, I guess is for lack of a better word. And then regarding the transition between rec and economic development, I would love to see, this is my personal opinion, to not see it go to one or the other, but to merge it together. Because I think this is a group effort. It is some rec and it is some economic development. I think both Mark and Tracy can bring some really great ideas to the table if we can get these 2 groups to collaborate along with the volunteers and the committee members. So that is my take tonight.
Thank you, Heather.
Any other questions of the committee? Please. We've had a lot of discussions to now. Seeing the next time we bring this discussion up will be the next time we fill the room, so I'd really like to not miss that opportunity. So, come on, Mr. Carville, you're never quiet. Step right up, sir. Come, please.
But you gotta give us your honest opinion, okay?
I always do, don't I?
I always assumed when he walked to the mic.
I'll reiterate a couple of the things that I said the last time we sat down and talked with this, and just listening to the discussion we've been having tonight. From the financial standpoint, I think you're looking at a challenge. If the net of this year, and I think we discussed the last time we had, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that we had anywhere between 12 to say 20,000 max. And if you put a part-time position in, how you're going to justify to pay for that, depending on how long that position is. If it's a 12-week position, 20 hours a week, maybe you can justify it. If it turns into more than that, that's going to be a hard thing to sell from a financial standpoint. Historically, looking at the festival, and when it started, a long time ago now, it was not done by the town. The town wasn't involved with it. The town supported it, obviously, because we have departments, we have to shut streets down, we have to logistics, get things set up. So the town's always been supportive of that and, basically sponsoring it. There was a group of volunteers, turned into the Moxie committee eventually. I think it originally, if I'm not mistaken, it was a group like a chamber. I don't know if it was actually the Chamber of Commerce. If, in looking to distribute a lot of this stuff around, if a group such as PCL or others are willing to step forward and work with what is already being done, I think that is a step, maybe it's a step back, but I think it's a step in the right direction, because then you get that ownership of it. It shouldn't be about making money. I don't think it's ever been about making money. So we don't want to lose sight of that, I think, as a town, because once we start doing that and pushing, making more money, that's pushing it towards an end, in my opinion.
because it's not going to be about what it was started as. So I guess I would say don't lose sight of that. It's not about that, but it doesn't mean that we should just throw all kinds of money at it in trying to make it bigger so we can make more money. You know, it becomes a vicious circle. That doesn't solve anything, I know that, but I think we don't want to lose sight of that. As a town, as a group, as a, you know, however you want to slice that, you know. As far as the rec taking on, you know, the rec has a portion of what goes on there, being the road race and the car show. The car show is a fundraiser, you know, that has been since it's been restarted. It has a designated beneficiary, being the senior group. The Moxie road race, it does make some money. It's not a huge amount, and like Mark said, it's probably taxed to the point, the size that it is right now. That money goes back into rec revenues, goes into the general fund, helps defray, you know, costs there. So those things make sense for the rec. And I'll reiterate what I said the last time I was here too, is that we just come to the committee here and gained a full-time maintenance person, turned a part-time position in the senior program to a full-time position because of the responsibilities and the programs that the rec has to run right now. So adding more into that, can it be done? You know, Mark's telling you he can do it. His staff is telling him they can do it. I guess my perspective is if you're asking for more to do what you're already doing and what you're tasked with, and then you're going to take on more, can you do that realistically? They don't want to stand here, neither one of them, and tell you they can't do it. I'm not in that position. That's not my job. I'm a volunteer, so I can relate to all the other volunteers that have come up here. My role for a long time has been playing devil's advocate. For whatever reason, I excel at it. So I'll ask questions.
You legitimately don't see why?
Yeah, I don't know. But I'll ask those questions. I'll continue to ask them as we move forward, whatever shape this takes, and you know, offer what I can from that perspective. But yes, I will be straightforward. You know, it is a related note, but I don't know when the construction project is supposed to happen on Main Street. But is that the state that's going to be doing that?
Yes.
They're really quick at everything. So.
Well, I guess what I'll offer is in talking with them about this, when that's going to happen. They were, and I'm assuming it was the state. They're doing a project right now, right on 201, right through Hollowell, and they started that in April, I believe. They started digging, and they have a festival up there, Old Hollowell Days. I guess I don't know how many years they've been doing it, but they actually did half the street. They paved it and made it so they could do their festival, and they're in the process of tearing up the other half of the street. So I'm not saying they'll do that for us, but it is certainly something to ask them when that time comes. And they ripped up sidewalks and the whole 9 yards down through there.
It'd be nice to think that they'd work with us.
It would. I only bring it up. I don't say it's it's something to ask for sure. So I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm like I said, I don't think it solves anything, but I think these are all things we want to keep in mind as we move forward, whatever form it takes.
I think just to wrap up, because I know we're getting a meeting from my part of it anyways. I think as a community, as a town, we need to look at the funding of the event as a different package than what we're doing in a sense tonight a little bit, because we're still actually using hypothetical money that you're going to make from an event that could rain all weekend and actually be in the negative, you know. To me, last time we had a big event like this that we talked about, the Moxie Festival, we were actually dropping personnel off left and right, because we were in very much a down economy where we were just trying to figure out the bare minimum to run a community. So at that point in time, the festival even got to the point of saying if we have any town staff, we could generate enough money to pay the town staff, because we just couldn't afford to actually pay the overtime. I mean, it seems really strange, but I mean, it was a different time frame. To me, I think as a council, I'd actually put it to our staff to actually come up with a plan on how to fund this, whether it's actually changing the way that we look at that TIF or however, to actually come up with a funding number that actually is going to present what we already pay and what we would actually need to hire somebody. And then if we have a good event and we're able to pay that back, that's awesome. But in an event that we have a bad year, we're not actually coming forward to council saying we just hired someone for $14,000 and we didn't make any money, so how are we going to pay them? You know what I mean, to me, we need to actually, if the community actually feels that the event is actually worthwhile and it's actually, what dollar value do you put to that from a community that will actually pay, need to pay. So, if you're saying between fireworks and hiring someone, we need to allocate $20,000 a year for this event, I think it's actually up to us to actually figure that out. Because if not, you just can't rely on the idea of revenues that are not guaranteed. I mean, I ran an event for a few years too that had about a $23,000 upfront cost. That if it rained, none of it was going to be there.
You lose it. I mean, when you have entertainment or whatever, you're still paying out.
Yeah, and we, as Ross knows, we do that quite well sometimes, because in Maine it could change in 5 minutes. So, I guess leaving this event for me, I think I'd need to actually get some more information from
Sure.
people to find out, put a dollar value on what those costs, and can we allocate that money? And if we can, without the idea of, so to speak, raising taxes, finding money to do it, I think that's what we need to do. And then if good revenues come in, and as Tim says, we're not making money, but if we can just reimburse for what it would cost us, to me that's awesome. And knowing that every year it may not be a break even, it may not even be a half payoff, but as a community, we just got to put a dollar tag to what we feel this event's worth. But
on the years that we make higher than what we anticipate, well, then it's sitting there on the event that we don't have a great year the following or the following after. So I think that once we can build that sort of, it doesn't have to be massive, but it just has to be enough to buffer.
Right.
If we can look at our historical and say, oh, it rained this year, this is what we drew that year. And it's roughly about the same, you're going to draw the same number of bodies, hopefully, in theory, but it's not always the case. So kind of getting back to the recommendations piece, one thing I heard, and I'm a big fan of leaving everything in either one or the other, and I've already kind of gone into the reasons why I think it'd be better to have it moved over. But I did hear something, and I want to be open-minded to this, and the idea of sharing across departments isn't one that I would certainly shoot down, but I would say there would be a healthy split of the heavy lifting landing in the recreation department. And I'm just going to I'm going to pull a number out. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but 75-25 at the very most, 25 landing in your office and 75 landing in your office. And then you guys could share the load, if you will, if that makes sense. I don't even know if that's something you even want to consider or talk about, but at least it's worth exploring to see if, you take all these tasks and you say, what's the economic development office sort of task that we should kind of hang on to, and what could be farmed out that the rec could handle. And that way you're not taking on the full load and you're not having to carry the full load. Does that sound like something that you guys would want to do?
No.
Okay, fair.
Here's why.
That's why I'm asking.
Oh, there's a lot of things that I haven't said, because I think you all know that June, July, and August are our most busiest months. We bring in 75% of our revenues. We expend 75% of our budget in June, July, and August. We have a lot going on, and our staff can't add any more to it. What I was saying was the things that you see in, September through February, those things, yes, we can do that because we're not so busy. But when it hits middle of March and our brochure hits the schools April 1st, we have registrations going on. So I was saying that we hire somebody for 16 weeks, starting middle of March till the middle of April or middle of July. That'd be the only way we'd be able to do it in our department.
I don't think that
75% he's talking about is not all on you. That 75% is under your umbrella, with maybe hiring staff.
75% of.
And it doesn't mean that we wouldn't bring in that person to assist with that as well. It's more about saying that, kind of a combination of the two. There are some functions here that just absolutely make sense for the economic development to be a part of and would be overseeing regardless. I don't think even if you took 100% on, she's not going to be involved anymore. She absolutely is going to be involved, but it'd be in a different aspect and a different way.
Agreed.
It would get her out of the weeds and have her more doing some of the stuff that's associated with economic development, attracting potential businesses who are thinking about landing in Lisbon, and do all the things that I can't begin to imagine what you do, so I'm not going to pretend I know. But I guess what I'm saying here is it gives her that 10,000 feet overview, whereas you're right down in the middle of the weeds. Sorry, buddy. But it is what it is. So I think that's what we're looking at. And you're saying, hey, that's our busiest time of year already. And while we have staff, we're pretty much, one-armed paper hangers in that point. So
you're not saying take on 75% of the Moxie Festival during the month of May, June, and July?
I'm saying that yes, you're not taking it on. It's under your umbrella,
okay.
But you're going to have a resource.
Okay.
Or the same resource that we brought in to assist her, we would consider bringing the same resource to assist you with that piece. It would be more of a person checking in with you, making sure. So that would you'd still be overseeing, and that person would report to you. But ultimately, they're going to be mostly working independently and have project management sort of background and experience. So they can drive the ball forward, but when they get to a point where they need some insight and overview, that's what, And I'm speaking here, but chime in, guys, if you're not seeing that as the vision you think.
I think we need to see a more specific proposal before we go any further with this. I'd like to see, actual breakdown of how many hours and where it's going to be, because right now it's quite vague what the proposal is. So I need to see more details before I'd be okay with it.
One of the things I would also like to see in that would be, I'm hearing recurring themes of things that are needed right now. The fact is, didn't have somebody actively available to be able to do sponsorship, parade, and communications associated with that. If there was a need of what the actual committee could use right now to be able to get that information out via the town website, I don't care the mechanism at this point. It's actually going to improve what we actually have for next year. Those kinds of things for what are our goals to be able to start working on this in the logistics before you start actually getting too far down the line.
Well, yes, and you need to take note of that is that the vendor chair has stepped down, the souvenirs chair has stepped down.
So add them to the list. The fact is, I know I have an incomplete list. You guys know what you have. Find the best way to be able to get this information out to be able to fill that need before the next festival is upon us. Anything else endgame to be able to start rolling into what we're 7 o'clock supposed to do? I don't want to cut anybody short because we have an audience that's captively here. I know why they're here. So if anybody has something, they're going to be pissed that you actually didn't share it on the ride home. The mic's right there. Thank you. Oh, he's good. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you. I spent a lot of time. We were here about 12 years ago and kind of wish we would have done what we're doing now. Know both these people well. I love them, care for them, and I would just say whatever we do decide moving forward, you can take a pie, you slice it in half, you still got, and they're both busy. I've talked to Mark. We dump this over on his department, then there's going to be other things he's going to be dropping, just like, in the case of Tracy. So I think if the answer to the question is we're going to continue the Moxie Festival as is, then to me the answer is it's got to change, right? However that looks. That's, and I think one of the gentlemen got up and said that. So if we're going to keep doing it, which I would be all for, if the answer is no, then okay, that's a different, but if the answer is we're going to keep doing the Moxie Festival as best we can, then we got to give them some help. And we'll do everything we can for those of us that are here, I know you guys do. You're busy, but I think moving forward, that'd be my only fear for them that, oh, here, good, Mark, go do. And come on, he can do some stuff like you said, but when you get to April, May, and June, as you know, just think of your busiest weeks, whatever it is, especially May and June. It's making hay time, and there's just not enough balers. I don't know how to say it. There's only so many people. So, thank you.
No, it kind
Please.
of leads on. Go ahead, Rick.
Rick Mason. This was one of the best Moxie festivals I think this town has seen, and it's because of Tracy and the committee. And I think they wanted to really put on a show for Gina. I believe that with all my heart. They worked their fingers to the bone. One of the big concerns I think Gina had in all the years that she did it, She always watched the Maine Festival in Lewiston. Remember that parade? She was worried that this parade was going to get too big and it would implode and disband. I think we got to be conscious of that, not to take the hometown spirit out of it. And what it is the Moxie Committee. I believe they're all from town. It's the spirit of this town. I mean, you got to be careful who you're going to hire to take that hometown spirit out when they're out visiting businesses, and because they're doing it as a job. I think we have to be careful of that. And again, I just think it was awesome this year, the downtown, moving it into the high school parking lot. I had a wonderful time. I really did, and I believe Gina was very happy with the way things went, and I just want to see this go on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just one other question. So if you were to get fill some of the roles that you have right now that need to start earlier, I mean, at what point do you think we would have to bring somebody on to actually even start? I mean, is this a discussion that we need to start looking at, soliciting the idea of who we could actually hire in the next few weeks or next month? Or, I mean, at that timeline, I guess really we didn't discuss that much as far as for...
Right.
Because as you know, you can get people interested, but it doesn't always mean you can have the person that's going to be able to make it happen.
It gets difficult, and I went through that when council asked me to seek for somebody before, when I had somebody on board. For doing part-time, and then if they're looking for something a little bit more, they're going to take on another, option as far as if it comes their way. It's true when you look through it, it doesn't involve a whole lot right now. It is the critical time is when we get into the springtime. And, and every year there are some new folks here that have stepped up and said that they want to be part of the committee. And there's other folks that wanted to step up and be part of the committee that aren't here. So I do have the interest of others, coming on board. But some of those committees need more than just one person to chair it. For the parade, for instance, I need somebody that's going to take on the role of doing all of the admin, and that's dealing with all of the emails, and that's working with the parade lineup. And I've got somebody there that's going to run and take care of where to put everybody in the actual lineup that day. But I need, the parade itself, you need a good 6 or 7 people, if not more, for just that day of the parade. We've done fairly well. We've recruited, I think I was recruiting at the last minute the day before of getting people to step up and help, and they did, and those folks did say that they would come back again next year and help. You just got to be ready for whatever comes your way and be able to be flexible with that. And the goal is that I was going to do everything that I could, as well as the committee. Everybody was committed to the festival and making sure that it went off and we had the best parade and that we were on top of everything. But I will be honest, in going forward, it's recruiting all over again, and the vendors alone are a lot. For that one, you need more than just one person to help take on that load, because just as Jonathan said, you're getting phone calls, on the weekends and in the evenings. And even though there's a vendor chair and a solicitor, that I'm still getting all the phone calls as well when people send it to me. And I forward them over to the vendor chair to take on that. So it's taking a little bit of that responsibility out. One thing I would like to say that was kind of mentioned as far as another organization, when I came here, my initial goal was to get the festival into a place where it could sustain and be on its own and have its own organization, nonprofit, a board of directors, its own bylaws. That was what I really saw for the future of the festival. But it's just not going to be there right now. And then, and I've worked on big committees like that, but they are all volunteers. I think the only paid person who's ever been on that committee has just been the treasurer, because they're responsible for all the funds. This festival is under the umbrella of the town. So you can't just hand it off to somebody else. It's because the insurance alone, they're not going to be able to pick it up. And again, depending on what events that you do, is going to determine what that insurance base would be for somebody else taking that on. So that's another critical element. That's why the funds are all filtered through the town, because the town is on basically the sole responsibility. So the town is a clearinghouse for everything.
Could we actually, I mean, just in a matter of time, because I know Alan wants to get rolling, could we actually try to put together a more practical budget of what this year's would be if we had an outside person? And also, I'd love to have you guys work together on a job description, just to put on paper, so.
I did
would-
put one
yeah.
together that I could send.
Yeah. It would just be nice to have that role, so someone would look at it and say, yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't pay me enough to do this, or this isn't so bad. You know what I mean?
You can't pay him $10 an hour.
You know what I mean? It's one of those things where on paper, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. Because again, it's one of those things where it'd be nice to actually have it laid out and make sure that if we are going to put it out there, that we can hire someone with a caliber to be able to do the job. You mean, and not fail, because if we do this one year and it doesn't work well, that's hard to recover from. So.
When does the committee meet?
Well, I haven't sent an email out to everybody yet. I wanted to get through tonight, but we will be setting up a meeting for September. I have to get with everybody to see what night. We've been doing some evening meetings, and so I've been trying to get those so folks that do work will have the opportunity to participate. So we've been doing 6 o'clock meetings.
Perfect. That would put that in the communication of what you're looking for when does it make sense, for what you're looking for needs.
Mm-hmm.
Package it. Anything else? Last thoughts?
I just want to reiterate what Rick said. I mean, that's been talking about turning it over to other organizations or hiring out like an event planner or whatnot. That's been my number one fear, was losing that Lisbon feel. I mean, anybody can walk in here and put on an event if they're qualified to do so, but is that going to take away from what we are as Lisbon? And I don't want to see this just be a festival. I want this to be a hometown, community-grown festival where everybody knows everybody, and it's important.
Cassie, I agree with that too, because that's what makes Moxie the festival the way it is.
Yes,
Everybody knows everybody.
Or reunions,
And
or
if you
families
get
come
someone,
home.
if you get somebody from out of town that doesn't know our town, they're not going to be able to connect. They're not going to be able to relate with people.
It could make it or break it.
My hope is we have some pretty talented people within our community that
I agree,
have someone step forward, right, make it happen.
Well, and I mean, that's one of the biggest things that's always been an issue since I've been on the committee, and I've been on it for years now, but it's the lack of volunteer. Everybody, I think we're down to 5 of us now, and not even, but people are always, at the beginning of the year, yeah, I want to volunteer. I had a list of 20 people last year. Not one of them showed. So it comes down to that we don't want to see it fail, so all of us take on more and more and more until we're burnt out. So if more people, even if it's only 1 or 2 hours, or if it's taking on one certain project, that eliminates a lot out of all of us. So, and it could explode out of what it already is. But we have to get people who want to volunteer.
Going twice. Done. Next topic. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
To send out
Let's get into the next part.
Let's do 5.
It is.
Twyla? Let's do 5 and we'll
It's got to clear out here right now. Oh, we're taking 5? Thank God.